Keith, thank you so much for being here today. We're so grateful that we get to interview you. I would love if you could introduce yourself.
Hi, Courtney. I'm delighted to be here. My name is Keith Ellis. I am an author and a superpower coach. And I've written a number of books. One of them that has been around for a while and tends to show up in colleges and graduate schools is something called The Magic Lamp, a goal setting for people who hate setting goals. And it's about exactly what it sounds like. It sort of takes conventional wisdom about goal setting and makes it easier to swallow. Because a lot of people talk about goal setting, and as it turns out, not a lot of people actually do it. And this sort of makes it easy for them. And what came out of that book and a number of years of experience since then is that there was something missing from it. And what was missing is what found its way into my most recent book, which comes out in October, called 10X Superpower. And the subtitle is What Was Impossible is Now Easy. And it's about taking your life, literally taking your life or your business or both, to a whole new level that is 10 times beyond where you are now. And there's some other books too. That there was a couple of intermediate books, but that sort of is the, if you will, the bookshelf that we're going to talk about today.
Love that. I would love if you could dive in a little deeper about what your book is about, your one that's coming in October.
Sure. So I mentioned The Magic Lamp, and I wrote this book about goal setting, and it did really well and helped lots of people around the world, translated in a bunch of languages. It was very cool. I used it. I followed my own advice for years and had some really good success. But it was always about incremental success. It was always about, okay, how do I make this day a little bit better? How do I add a little bit? How do I work toward these goals over a period of time? Worked great, but I got to a point in my life where I realized I want more than incremental progress. I want exponential progress. I want to grow in a big way. I want to have a bigger impact. And this troubled me because I'd spent my life, I'm a reading junkie, okay. I'm also I guess you'd call it a self-improvement or personal development junkie, self-help junkie, and have been my entire adult life. And I've read all kinds of stuff and went to seminars, and here I was at this stage in my life where I couldn't solve this problem for myself. I couldn't figure out how to do this exponential leap that I wanted to do. So I did some more research, plunged into books and seminars, and grabbed every successful person I could find and peppered them with a bunch of questions, and came up with something called Magic Questions, which is not a book we're talking about today, but it was a book that was sort of between these two books. And Magic Questions were the key that unlocked everything, because every personal success system that I've ever studied, from Socrates to Earl Nightingale to Tony Robbins, they were all based on questions, a certain type of question. So that got me excited. And then I kept studying, and then I found sort of the linchpin, the piece that made it all work. And that's where the 10X superpower comes in. And it's in a nutshell, it's 10 breakthroughs. Each one is a profound breakthrough. It'll change your life. It sort of turns conventional wisdom on its head. Each one reverses what we conventionally think about. And you put them all together and you have this 10X superpower. And the X is an exponent. The X is not 10 times. It's a little X up there as an exponent, which means you can do 10 times first, but then when you do 10 times progress in your life, you can do another 10 times, right? And build on the first 10 times. And now it's exponential. Now it's 100 times. And you can do the same thing again. And now it's 1,000 times. So that's what the new book is about.
Amazing. What inspired you to write your book?
Well, the larger question there is what inspires anybody to write, right? It's just something, it's one of my, I call them joy strengths. Joy strengths, and this is something that one of the breakthroughs in the book too, in the new book. Joy strengths are things that you love so much, you're really good at them. And you're so good at them, you really love them. Right? So you got it covered. It's something where there's a concept of flow. You get into doing something so much, you just get lost in it. You know, one of those things, you get into an activity and you're just totally taken by the activity, and then you look at the clock and 5 hours have gone by, that kind of thing. Those kinds of activities are full of joy to us. They're also our strengths. That's why I call them joy strengths. And if you focus on your joy strengths, then you make much greater progress in your life than if you try to improve your weaknesses, right? So an example I give in the book is my handwriting. When I was a kid, I got okay grades, but I was lucky to pass handwriting because in those days they taught cursive. Nowadays, I don't think they do anymore, at least not in Virginia, which is where I'm from. But in those, cursive was important, and the teachers really pounded on me to get my handwriting going. And I always cared more about what I was writing than how it looked, and they didn't. So they worked really hard to improve my handwriting, never worked to improve my writing, right? I was passionate about the writing. That sort of followed me through my life. And so it's a really long-winded answer to your question. I wrote these books because I love to write.
Love that so much. When you were writing your book, who were you thinking of when it comes to who your book is for?
Oh, that's a wonderful question. That's actually a fairly simple answer. The people who will, I think, get this right off the bat are successful entrepreneurs. People who you're an example of an entrepreneur, and people who have set up for themselves. They've started their own business because they're passionate about something, or because they just want to be in this business, whatever their reasons are. They've started a business, they've had some success. They're probably working harder than they've ever worked in their life. And they get to a point where they've got financial success. They're starting to achieve what they want in life. And then they think, well, isn't there more to life? Like life? And at that stage is when people start thinking, okay, how do I make this leap? I've got a great business. How do I make this leap to in the business, make it 10 times what it is, but also have more freedom in my life, more joy in my life? So it's really targeted at successful entrepreneurs. Lots of people can benefit from it, but there's a I haven't told you the bad news yet. I've been telling you the good news, the good stuff. This book is unique for another reason, not just the content. I'm charging $10,000 for it. So it's the first book in history that I know of that cost $10,000. And there's method to this madness. And it's the $10,000 is essentially a test. It's getting somebody's attention. The book, and by the way, the $10,000, it comes with a guarantee that says if this book isn't worth at least $100,000 to you, you get your money back, right? So what's in the book is so powerful, I wanted people to pay attention to that. And it's so new, I wanted people to pay attention to it. Now, we've all read books that are worth $10,000. We just didn't pay that much for them. But that we learned a lot from them, we enjoyed them, they taught us a lot, but we didn't pay 10 grand for them. This is just saying up front, look, this book costs this much, it's worth way more than this. And oh, by the way, and here's the sort of the flip on conventional wisdom. I'm going to give you a year of my superpower coaching program for free with the book. Now, most people who are in my business, which is the coaching business, we'll give you a book for free, or say, here, have it for free, or here, it's $20 or whatever. And then they'll try real hard to sell you an expensive coaching program. That's their business model. Nothing wrong with that. That's great. Works for a lot of people. I'm being totally upfront with this. I'm saying, look, the book is worth 10 grand. You pay $10,000 for the book, and I give you the coaching program. No sales pitch, no anything else. It's just there. And it's a terrific program. It helps take all this stuff we've been talking about, these breakthroughs, and brings them to life in your life. And then I've accomplished what I set out to accomplish. Because you asked me who I wanted to help, and I mentioned entrepreneurs. I don't want to just give them a book to read. I want to help them change their lives, transform their lives and their businesses. And I can do that with the book and the coaching program together. I'm just not charging them for the coaching program.
How long have you been writing and what made you really sit down and start?
Well, so I said I've enjoyed writing since I was a kid. That's not entirely true. I hated to write term papers and stuff when I was in school. Hated it. Drove me nuts. Um, and got through that. And then as I neared graduation from college, I took a class, and it was called Work, Education, and Career Choice. Um, and it was a sort of centered around a book that was very popular then called What Color is Your Parachute? Book's still around, people still teach it. But it was about how do you plan a life? And this is pretty cool because I was a kid, I was in college. And what came out of that, of deeply investigating who I am and what I wanted to be, was that I wanted to be a writer. Now, this makes no sense, or it didn't at the time, because I hated term papers and all that other stuff. But I got out of college, and the first thing I did was I wrote a novel. Crummy novel. Well, it wasn't a crummy novel. I still like it. I couldn't get it published, but I wrote it. I was very proud of it. And then from then it was, Katie bar the door. I just kept writing. I just loved to write. And so not entirely certain where that came from, but I remember when I first realized that, which is, I said, right as I was graduating from school.
Love that. What is your schedule like when you are writing a book?
Ooh, that's an interesting question. So um, I like to do what I most like to do, joy strength, first thing in the morning. When I get up, I'm freshest. I can't wait to get out of bed. I've always been that way. Sometimes it drives my wife nuts because I'm bouncing out of bed and the sun's coming up. But I love that. And also you get into the habit, especially if you're in a situation where there are other people in the room. You have roommates or you have family, and there are other people in the house. It's nice for me to get going before anybody else is pulling me this way, pulling me that way, or there's noise. I just get up and start writing. So the short answer to the question is I love to write in the morning, but I love to write at any point of the day. And I love to dictate these days. Dictation has become such an important part of my workflow. I've been using dictation for years just because I've got terrible handwriting. My typing skills are okay, but they're slow, and they don't keep up with my brain. But if I talk, as you can tell, it just flows. And if it's capturing all these words on paper or on computer automatically through voice recognition, then that's terrific. And I've been using voice recognition for about 25 years since it was really rough technology. Now it's very advanced technology. And then I also carry something around on my phone and my watch, so I can actually dictate when I'm swimming in the pool or taking a shower or taking a walk or anything else, riding in the car. I can, if an idea comes to me, I capture it. So that's to me a real key thing about writing. If you think of something, get it down on paper, get it down on your devices, but capture it or else it'll just slip away. It's like a fish on a hook. You think, I remember this. This is great. I'll come back to this. And then it's gone. It slips off the hook. So that's sort of the key to my writing workflow.
Amazing. What do you need in your writing space to help you stay focused?
So when I am sitting down to write, I have probably a workspace not unlike what I'm looking at in your studio. I have multiple screens, and I do that. I do lots of research when I write. And I don't mean necessarily I wrote a book about quantum computing. I wrote a novel about quantum computing. It's called No Secrets. Very successful. Lots of fun to read. In fact, it's so much fun to read that I rewrote it 3 times. I finally figured that out years later, and it's because I couldn't let it go. It was just too much fun hanging out with these characters. But I did a lot of research about quantum computing because that's not my thing, and I had to kind of understand it in order to talk about it or talk around it, if you will. But I do the same thing with words. I'm fascinated with words. So when I'm trying to find the right word for a sentence, I will pull out my various thesauruses or thesauri and see what the shade of meaning is I'm going after. So that's research. So I'm constantly going back and forth to things. I use AI as a research tool, that kind of thing. So focusing for me is having a screen in front of me with voice recognition and a good microphone, so I can just be sitting like this and talk extemporaneously, just bang, just let it go, and see what appears on screen. And then I'm in my joy strength. I'm flowing. At that point, I'm gone for the rest of the day, or for however long I've allowed myself to do this.
Love that. What is your favorite writing snack and drink?
Uh, I make a really good smoothie every morning, and a big mug of coffee, and that gets me through half the day, so that I can focus on writing. Actually, get up and climb stairs every 20 or 30 minutes, just because, for health reasons, that's what they say you're supposed to do instead of just sitting in front of your desk. And it's like it unlocks something in my brain. It's so interesting. I'm writing something, I get up, walk the stairs a couple of times, I'm breathing again, and then suddenly I look at what I wrote and I say, whoa, wait a minute, that's what I want to say. So that's all part of the process, but I'm still focused on my writing. I'm just, moving my body, if you will. Sometimes I have a standing desk as well. So sometimes I'll stand at the desk and write that way. That's also a good physiological change that helps me dig deeper into the writing resource.
Love that. What type of books do you personally enjoy reading?
So I read lots of personal development books. I mean, lots of them, because I'm fascinated. I'm fascinated when I learn something I don't know, which is every time I pick up a new book. It's one of these things. I've spent a lifetime learning certain things, and there's all this stuff I don't know. And then, you reach a point where you realize, wait a minute, there's a whole lot more I don't know than I know. That's never going to change. So to me, the exploration for knowledge is just a joy. One of my joy strengths. I love doing it. I love doing the research. I love doing the writing. So personal development books are very much at the top of the list. I also love thrillers. Just good old-fashioned, grinded out. I'm not a big murder mystery fan. I know that's a huge genre. That's just not something I like to read, although there's often that in these things. But I like really interesting characters that are in really tough situations, and I like good writing. Schlocky thrillers don't work for me because I get tripped up in the writing. I get halfway into this scene or this character, and then the writer does something not terribly competent. It's like, I'm not there anymore. Just the magic disappeared. But then I'll find, and I know you find this when you find a writer you like, I'm just taken in there, and it's like, okay, I'm in the hands of a professional. I'm just gonna lock the doors and go along for the ride. And I love finding an author like that.
Love that. Are there any books or authors that inspired you to become a writer?
Yes, actually. Well, so again, I told you how I became a writer. This book, this experience with around this book called "What Color Is Your Parachute," which isn't about writing. It's about figuring out what you want to do in life, which is where it all starts for all of us, really. But the best book about writing, and it really transformed me as a writer, is by a guy named William Zinsser, who used to teach at Yale. He used to be an editor of the New Yorker, I think. He died maybe 10 years ago. Wonderful man. And he wrote a book called On Writing Well. And it's a classic. Before he died, I think he'd gone through 5 revisions of it. And I would buy each one when it came out, and write him and tell him how much I loved this new thing. But he came up with a theme that I've never forgotten, and I think of it every time I sit down to write. He says, writing clearly is about thinking clearly. And I've always been fascinated with thinking. So writing to me is about thinking. It's an expression of thinking, but it's really part of the exercise of prying out of your, creative subconscious, whatever you want to call it, whatever you might want to create, whatever's in there. So he wrote this amazing book, And he talked about writing with clarity, humanity, and simplicity. And he said, if you have just gotten out of school, and I had at the time, he said, you've probably gotten into the habit of writing for your professors. And you really want to sound smart, and you really want to sound educated. So you write this, no offense to anybody who's in that mode, because I certainly was for many years, you write a bunch of crap. It's not wrong. It's just you aren't there on the page. You're trying to put your education on the page. And his point is, drop all that. Somehow you got to strip that away, write with simplicity, clarity, and humanity. And you have to think clearly before you can write clearly. And then there's much more than that. But I carried that away from that book, and it's informed my writing ever since. And if I write something that's a bunch of gobbledygook that sounds like I'm trying to write for a professor, I got to change it. Yeah, okay, I know big words, but that doesn't convey what I'm trying to convey. That just conveys that I'm an arrogant so-and-so. So anyway, that book changed everything. And then there are other great books. There's a book by Stephen King about writing. And I've never read a Stephen King book because I'm not a horror guy. But he's a good writer. And his book about writing was wonderful and wonderfully written, and taught me a lot of stuff. So, those are some examples, two big, polarities in terms of their career paths, but great books about writing.
Love that. What books did you grow up reading? Did you have an all-time favorite?
Okay, so do I have an erudite answer, or do I just tell you the truth? I think I'm going to go with the truth here. I grew up reading comics. I had three big brothers. One of my big brothers collected comics. And you read these stories about people. You read a biography, and they are described as a voracious reader. I was a voracious reader, but it was comic books. But the thing is, I learned a ton from comic books. I learned from everything I read. And maybe what I ended up with is a comic book mentality. I don't know. But I knew so much stuff through school that nobody that I went to school with knew, because I was constantly reading comic books. And then there got a point in my life, I was probably in junior high school, when I started reading books, but probably because teachers assigned them. And then I said, oh, this is cool. This is even better than a comic book. I don't need pictures. The words are great. And then I was gone. Then I was, that same voracious reading thing, became books, some magazines too, and surfing the web nowadays and various magazines and blog posts and things. But I still love reading books.
Love that. On the other side of that, now as an adult, what are your favorite series or authors that if they come out with something, you automatically grab it?
Uh, so there's in terms of personal development, there are some people who are just leading the pack as far as I'm concerned. They aren't necessarily, well, one good example is Socrates. Socrates is not thought of as a personal development person, except that's what he was all about. Know thyself, all about asking questions. The Socratic method came out of that experience. So ancient Greek philosophy is interesting to me, centering around him and Plato. In a more contemporary sense, I like reading stuff. Tony Robbins writes interesting books. He's very, hugely popular. He writes interesting books. Books about specific things are interesting to me. So books about health are interesting. Books about writing are interesting. That kind of thing. Again, they all sort of have a personal development angle. There's a guy that has recently written a book about habits called Atomic Habits. His name is James Clear. Super popular book, but it's a terrific book. That's why it's super popular. So things like that. Those are things I really enjoy.
Love that. What would you tell someone who just started out with reading again?
Uh, you mean like they've taken a break or they just didn't have time or something and now they're reading again? Uh, I mean, the short answer to that is what interests you. I mean, it's always about self exploration, right? Somebody says, well, how do I set a goal? Well, what do you want? Right? There's a wonderful moment in Alice in Wonderland where she comes to a crossroads and I don't remember who the companion is. She comes to a crossroads and she says, which way do I go? And the guy she's with says, maybe it's the Jabberwocky. I don't remember. Guy she's with says, well, where do you want to get? And she says, I don't know. And he says, then it doesn't matter, does it? If you come to a crossroads and you don't know where you're going, it doesn't matter which road you take. So it really starts with that. So same thing with reading. What interests you? What would you like to know more about? Or do you just want to escape? And if you want to escape, where do you want to escape to? It's the same question, right? It's still about what do you want? So do you want to escape into a crime story or to a romance or to a romantic crime story or to a thriller or whatever it is? And as you know, every imaginable genre is out there. And if you think of something you'd like to escape into and you can't find it, write it.
Love that. On the other side of that, what would you tell someone just starting to write their own book?
It's the same thing. It's actually, you asked it. The best advice I ever got was the question you asked at the very beginning. Who are you writing this book for? And I would take that one step beyond that and say, who are you writing it for, and what results do you want them to experience? So when I wrote my thriller, I wanted to write a book that I wanted to read. I'd run out of thrillers that I really liked and I thought were well written, and I was so desperate to sort of keep in that world because it was fun that I just started writing. As an example of if you can't find a book that's exactly what you want, write it. And in that case, what I wanted to do was to write a book that I wanted. I was actually the audience, and that's not a bad advice for a writer, by the way. Write something that matters to you. Write something that you care about. Don't try to write for anybody else. That's a disaster. It's okay to say, I've targeted this for entrepreneurs, for example, but I didn't write 10x Superpower for entrepreneurs per se. I wrote it for me, the way I wanted to read it, in a way that I hope will be useful to my target audience. So that's the advice for reading or for writing. Write it for yourself. Figure out who you would like to be a hero to, if you will. Who you would like to have enjoy this book, and then keep that in mind as you're writing it.
Love that. What's one thing that people are generally surprised to find out about you?
I think how handsome I am is probably I think that shocks them. Besides that, that I've spent a career in marketing. Most people know me as a writer, but I've been a salesperson. It's because the people in the sort of larger world know me from what I've written, but the people who meet me realize that I've had a career in marketing and sales, high technology marketing and sales with some of the biggest companies in the world, also a lot of startup companies. So that sometimes surprises people. I love startup companies. I love working with startup companies. That's sort of where my interest with entrepreneurs came from. So I guess that's a surprise. Other than that, I don't think I'm a terribly surprising person.
Love it. Is there anything you would like to say or add?
Yeah, I'd like to give people something to take away. Is that okay? When I have an interview or a face-to-face conversation with somebody, I always like for them to get something that they can actually use. If I'm talking about a book, I don't want it to be a sales pitch. I want it to be, hey, here's a little tidbit. There's a lot of tidbits in this book, so that's the sales pitch part, but here's the tidbit. So let's talk about 10x Superpower for a second. The tagline, the subtitle is "What Was Impossible is Now Easy." The book is really about thinking about your thinking in a way that allows you to take something that you genuinely believe is impossible for you to do, and do it. And do it so well that maybe it becomes easy. And people hear this and they think, okay, that's crazy. It's impossible. It's not going to work. And then the book sort of steps you through this. You've done this many times in your life already. You just don't know it. Think of a baby learning to walk. How many times will a baby try to learn how to walk before it gives up? Never gives up, right? It just keeps going till it learns to walk. That's an instinct. That's programmed deeply into us. We each have this instinct. Well, think about that for a second. Think about that instinct. When the baby started crawling, it was absolutely physically and psychologically and emotionally impossible for that baby to walk. A few months later, the baby's walking. What happened? The impossible became possible and then became easy. Okay, that's walking. That doesn't count, Keith. You can't talk about that. Well, what about learning how to talk? What about learning how to read, how to write? Same thing. At one point, it was impossible for us. We couldn't hold a pen. Another point, it was easy. Well, that's, you're kids, you're developing, none of that counts. Okay, what about when you learn to ride a bike? I don't know about you. I had 3 older brothers. I used to watch them riding. I'd get on my little bike with training wheels and fall over with training wheels. And it was impossible. There's no way I was going to ever learn how to ride a bike. Now I couldn't forget how to ride a bike if I wanted to, right? Okay, that's riding a bike. That doesn't count. How about driving a car? Same thing. I remember watching my mom drive a car, thinking, how does she do this? How does she keep from running into this tree or this other car? And then pretty soon I was driving a car. And now, how do we drive cars? We're chatting with the person next to us. We're listening to a podcast, and we're piloting this 4,000-pound machine. And those are examples that are sort of rites of passage for all of us. But we have our own examples. And I urge people, so this is a little piece I'd like people to take away. Think about other times in your life when you've done something that you really thought was impossible, but you wanted it so much, you made it possible. And the way you did it is you increased your capabilities. You became more capable. So what was impossible, you add a couple of capabilities and suddenly, maybe it is possible. You add some more capabilities. Growth is what we're talking about here. Personal development. You add some more capabilities and now it's possible. You add some more capabilities and it's easy. So this is out there for people if they want to make this kind of leap. I call it a 10x leap, 10x superpower. It's really going from what you believe is impossible to what is possible. And the book shows you essentially how to do that.
Love that. Where's the best place for readers to find your book? I know some readers love signed copies. Is that an option and the best place to connect with you?
So I have a LinkedIn page. I can never remember my handle for that. I worked for LinkedIn for a number of years, and I still can't remember my handle. I think it's Keith Ellis Magic. But anyway, I'm on LinkedIn. They can connect with me there, and I invite them to. I'm also on Facebook. Don't spend a lot of time on Facebook. Whole story behind that, but nothing against it. It's a terrific place to be. The website where they can track down the book, 10xsuperpower.com. So 10xsuperpower.com. And what they'll find there actually is a quiz. And the quiz, I call it 10x reality check. And it's asking you some direct questions about whether you're ready to take this leap in your life, because not everybody's ready for this. Some people are just happy exactly where they are in their lives. They don't want 10 times what they have. They don't want 10 times more money or 10 times more happiness and 10 times better health. That's where they're coming from. God bless them. So this sort of lets you take a quiz and get a sense of where you are. And you can always visit me and contact me at keithellis.com. That's out there too.
And I just want to say thank you so much for being here. We're so grateful that we got to interview you. We'll be sure to drop those show links in the notes. That way everyone can find you. And again, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. This is a ball.
Ah